You live in a world where 60-year-old mainframes continue to live and coexist in a very significant manner with something that just originated yesterday. You have things like algorithmic trading. One would argue it is automated, and it is data backed decisions that algos are taking. You would start seeing things like blockchain and AI eventually all coming together. Simplification is not necessarily driven only by AI or automation. I think that's a cool thing to say, that
Right.
AI has simplified my life. But what is needed is.
Thank you so much for taking the time and welcome to Tech Brew.
Thank you, Vandana. Glad to be here. Happy to chat.
Yeah, sure, Kishore. Kishore, to begin with, I just want to step into the whole ecosystem first. You support systems that move trillions of dollars every day. But what part of the process would surprise most people because it still isn't as automated and seamless as they assume it to be?
Yeah, I mean, see, what we do, right? I mean, we move trillions of dollars every day, right? As you mentioned, amongst many other things that we do, right? Um, a lot of what we do is in the North American markets for financial services. And the markets by nature in North America is fairly fragmented. It's unlike India, where markets are fairly vertically integrated. In places like the US and other Western countries, the capital markets continue to be fairly fragmented, right? So what happens is there are millions of dollars that get moved between different parties and different intermediaries in the entire like a trade life cycle. And one is dealing with the complexity of the entire process, not only in terms of the number of parties involved, the number of systems that are involved, every different entity having their own tech, every different entity having their own ways of working, every different entity having their own, operating model and business model, etc. Right? And so you can imagine the complexity that Broadridge solves by being in the center of everything, right? What would surprise is sometimes the most simplest things that it, a lot of people would assume that it's obvious that why is it not automated, is because of the high levels of regulation and compliance and the security controls that need to be placed in the financial markets, right? So a lot of what happens in the financial markets is always going to have a human in the loop oversight. So I think to your question, what I would sort of a long-winded answer, finally I would conclude by saying that most of it is automated very thoughtfully. It is not like it is not automated, but automated very thoughtfully, because you would still need somebody who understands the complexity and has the subject matter expertise and the domain expertise to validate if whether the product, whether the AI, in today's world, the AI, or whether any other automation bot is doing what it's supposed to do, right, in this whole process. So that's where we are today in the financial services world. And I think that is the right way, thoughtful way of looking at how do we bring innovation into the financial markets here.
Got it, Kishore. But do you think that, say, in the next few years, this whole process would get more simplified, or you would be able to bring in more automation with the help of AI or other kind of software programs that are there?
I so I think there are two part answer to this, right? Uh, Simplification can happen even without automation and AI, right? So what you would see essentially, and what we've been doing at Broadridge and and I think many other firms would be looking at to do this, is this entire concept of in the olden days or even today, it's being looked at as business process reengineering, right? So let's just imagine that any process has evolved over many years and maybe decades, right? And certain processes that were in place at a certain point of time may not necessarily be needed today, right? But what ends up happening is people continue to adhere to the process and follow that, and that sort of adds um, waste in the system, and that
Yeah.
also sometimes adds complexity in the system, right? So simplification is not necessarily driven only by AI or automation. I think that's a cool thing to say, that
Right.
AI has simplified my life, but what is needed is the mindset of Kaizen, right, or the 1% daily improvement that we could look at. And there you could find wastages that you eliminate, right? And then you sort of redesign the processes to make it a lot more simpler, and you try to have the workflows in the process that are actually only having the most necessary and valuable and meaningful steps, and you eliminate waste, right? That's been our mantra, that's been our philosophy for many years now. That's been the catalyst for our transformation, be it in operations, be it in shared services or engineering, right? uh, Having said that, I think AI and automation and the new generation of agentic AI, etc., um, is going to help question a lot of fundamentals of why we are doing the things the way that we are doing, right? And it is going to be accelerating this change faster, right? And it's going to bring efficiencies. It's going to accelerate the change. It is going to be a great tool for anyone who is willing to embrace AI. If you just take a financial services, a banking institution, for example, right? Uh, the folks who are working in the bank are um, used to certain ways of working, right?
Exactly.
And as you start seeing the new talent that these banks start hiring, the Gen Zs and the next generation, they are naturally comfortable with how to work with AI, right? So invariably, you will start seeing that things at a bank probably will resemble what they are used to outside of the bank as well, right? So that is a change in how things will work in the future. That's definitely going to happen. And the institutions who are investing on it and wanting to transform themselves will emerge out as winners. So that's how I see it. Again, simplicity and AI doesn't always necessarily need to go hand in hand. Yeah, but if it comes together, I think it can accelerate the process to make things simple. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. That's a very good way of putting it, Kishore. Now, I want to touch upon blockchain versus AI. What I'm trying to say is, say 5 years ago, I mean, everyone were talking about how blockchain was supposed to transform financial markets. Today, AI is also making similar claims. Uh, but according to you, which technology out of these two has created more real world value inside financial infrastructure so far, and why do you think that?
I don't think it is one versus other, right? I'm not saying necessarily just in the context of blockchain versus AI. Any technology, it is never one versus another, right? You keeping blockchain and AI aside, like if you live in a world where 60-year-old mainframes continue to live and coexist in a very significant manner with something that just originated yesterday, right? So it's never like one versus another. And uh, e- I think blockchain, and now blockchain had its hype, and then everybody was calling uh, blockchain is dead. Uh, but then in the last 2 3 years, with all the momentum building around things like tokenization and stable coins and tokenized deposits, etc., it is again, something that everybody is focused on, right? Rightfully so. And it's going to be very transformative in areas where it makes sense to use blockchain as the underlying technology. Um, AI is a lot more uh, democratic in nature. I think it is a lot more prevalent, and I see AI as something that can impact the common man uh, a lot more than possibly a blockchain, right? So
Yeah.
each technology has its places, and if you look at Broadridge, right, we think that these are these are not isolated technologies, right? These all have to come together, and the right uh, problems that the industry wants to be solved is essentially going to be a combination of multiple of these technologies, right? Institutions will not look at this as individual technologies in its own isolation, but it'll start looking at how do we synthesize all these technologies together to solve a real world business problem, right? So you would start seeing that, at some point of time, you could potentially have and it happens today, right? Like if you're in the financial services, you have things like algorithmic trading, right, which is largely the you one would argue it is automated, and it is data backed decisions
Yeah.
that algos are taking. And you would start seeing things of that also happen on the tokenized world, right? So you would start seeing things like blockchain and AI eventually all coming together to deliver value. um, so I mean, again, I would sort of say that it's never one technology versus
One
another. Each
versus.
technology was meant for a certain problem, and if you start looking at what are the first principles of and the building blocks of the technology, you would start figuring out how do you bring all these things together to solve a much more complex problem.
Got it. So, Kishore, is it safe to say that, at least in the financial space, AI is still not being completely utilized or completely understood? We're still figuring out different ways or things that can be used from it. Like, for example, even from a cybersecurity point, how AI can probably be used to fortify it or maybe even expose it. So is it assumed that we still need time, at least in the finance space?
Uh, what happens in AI, right? And I think this is again something that you would be aware of, Vandana, is that um, many of those AI projects, right? And I think it's probably true for all emerging tech, right? And I wouldn't necessarily call AI as emerging tech anymore, because AI is very much mainstream
Well, in the yeah.
in everybody's lives. And so what happens is that it is very easy to build things using AI that can validate the concept fairly quickly. It's shrinking the proof of concept, proof of value, building prototypes, building MVP quite faster, right? Um, but then it sets an expectation that products can also be built at a much faster velocity, right? But what typically happens in a large enterprise is that, and rightfully so, uh, uh, the systems are designed in a way to make sure that it is all being built in a very thoughtful manner. And again, in financial services specifically, there is a lot of focus on how do you build things that are going to be compliant to the regulations, how do you build things that are going to be extremely secure, how do you build solutions that just doesn't work for Vandana and Kishore but works for millions of people, right? So we're talking about making it scalable, making it resilient, making it always on, etc. And those things are always going to be super important, right? Be it AI or non-AI solution, right? So I think it is also people having the right expectation that if it took a year to build, um, it could possibly be 3 to 6 months for it to be built with AI. I think a lot of people have an assumption that what took 1 year could now be built in 1 week. That's not always true, right? Like, I mean, you can still build a proof of concept in maybe a day to a week. And we are seeing that, right? We are seeing that things are getting built faster, but it takes time to actually test it, make it really, really secure, make it resilient, get all the approvals in place, right? A lot of things happens outside of what actually you build to be compliant with, the regulations that are in place in each of the countries. And so that does take time, right? So I don't think necessarily that AI is not delivered on the promises. It is more that the expectations have been probably wrongly set in some cases, right?
Correct, Kishore. Looking at the India infrastructure in terms of in the finance space, what do you think is that India is getting right in the financial infrastructure today that probably even other markets are increasingly interested in learning from?
Very interesting, Vandana. I was talking to somebody recently who actually was saying that they just blown away by the digital experience in India, right? When it comes to financial services, uh, and rightfully so, right? I think the team that has behind UPI is to be applauded for that, and is an inspiration for many folks, not just in India but globally, right? Um, I think I think it's thanks to all the key stakeholders in India. I think be it the government, be it the policymakers, be it the regulators, be it the banking institutions, and be it the technologists. The ecosystem is very conducive to think digital, right? And I think the Digital India policies have really, really helped, right? And again, I think these things take time, right? I mean, the hard work that goes behind many of these things, uh, it takes years, and finally when it arrives, the experience is so good, uh, then it survives and it thrives for a long time, right? And I think a lot of macro factors also made it happen. I mean, we lived through COVID, and I think that's where the entire digital payments and digital banking took off, right? And today you cannot imagine going back to a non-digital world, right? And what's happened is that those learnings, at least from the payments vertical, has been well understood, and India is trying to replicate that in many other places, right? With that being said, I think India still, again, the advantage is many of these things happened in India much later than when it happened in, say, US, for example, in terms of the business itself. Like for example, if you take capital markets, US capital markets have been in place for now centuries, right?
Essentially.
And so the systems that has been in place were not digital first, right, or digital native for in many cases. Whereas India, in some areas at least, have been fortunate that you launch certain markets with a digital first mindset because the technology was available for you. So I think there is also, um, uh, how would I put it? It was favorable for India to make things digitally native, which may not always be the case for many other countries, right? And India has taken advantage of that, and we're very digitally savvy, I would say, compared to a lot of other countries and many other countries. And I think you're aware that things like UPI is now being adopted in many other countries, not just as a service, but also the underlying tech itself is being exported in many cases, right? And the way it has been designed has been obviously mind blowing. So I think that those are the things that I think India gets it right. Again, Uh, I think, and thanks to the regulators and the policymakers in India, I think one would see that in India, it, the guardrails are so well thought through that when the experience becomes generally available to people, it's quite seamless.
Got it, Kishore. Coming to the end of this interview, I want to end it on to understand your personal journey. Looking back at it, what development in financial technology surprised you the most? This can be a broad generic one. I mean, it's not specific to Broadridge
Yeah.
alone, from your understanding.
Yeah, I mean, well, again, I mean, when I started the journey to now, my own like from my personal life, again, I would say the entire digital experience of the Indian banking system has been um, a surprise, right? I mean, you wouldn't have imagined that you could do pretty much everything that you need to do when it comes to financial services and banking, particularly um, right from the confines of your living room, or right,
Yes.
or forget like living room. Like if you are in your car, you're traveling somewhere, and you could still do a large value transaction. It wouldn't have been possible 20 years back, right? And so that has been really, really surprising. And the biggest challenge of something like that is, strangely, I think, at least it is personally for me that's happened. I don't know if it's happened to you, Vandana, is that we have forgotten how to sign in the same consistent manner. And
Oh
so
my
you
God,
do end
that's
up
a
have a problem of
consistent problem
the
all the
when
time.
you actually use checks in some cases,
Yeah,
you're always unsure if this check will go through or not because of your signature
I've faced
mismatch.
that.
So that actually, well, that is an inconvenience. That
Good.
is a reflection of how much, the digital prevalence has taken over lives.
Absolutely. And is there any apprehension or something that probably you're worried about how things would evolve in the future? Like with the way now we're talking a lot of AI agents, or say mythos level models which can probably crack the whole cybersecurity piece. I mean, do you have any of those thoughts?
I look at these challenges as opportunities for not just enterprises. If you look at, and I'm taking a very philosophical view here, right? Us human beings have survived now many, many, many years, and
Yeah.
we have evolved, right? So it is always going to be Darwinism at play. Uh, Things are going to be in front of you. Things are going to be challenging, and individuals and enterprises which embrace the challenge, which um, are equipping themselves well to address those challenges, will come out as winners, right? And so, we will continue to thrive, right? It's just that whether you, as individuals and enterprises, we're going to be wanting to accept the challenge, right? Like, I mean, off quoted, the shift from print photography to digital, and the
Yeah.
impact it had on companies which did not embrace, is a classic example of Darwinism, right? So I think that's going to be the same when we encounter today agents, and maybe in couple of decades, maybe true AGI, right? As people are adopting. So I think we will continue to figure out a way to explode. So I look at them as challenges, and I look at them as opportunities. Again, if you have a change mindset, a transformation mindset, you, you will be able to thrive. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kishore. This has been a very insightful interview. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Vandana.